Why isn't the delete button working? What's going on here? Wow, this is cool. This is
supposed
something
to work this
completely
way.
different.
Wow, this is crazy.
Oh, nice.
Who
This is something
gives a shit?
for sure. This is
Oh,
unbelievable.
I see.
You know what? Buck FIM. Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome to our 5th episode of Buck FIM. Today we have a very special guest on the line, one who I've worked with in the past back in their Imagine It days. I'm really pumped to have him on. I'd like to introduce you to Carl Storms, a technical solutions lead for BIMTrack. Thanks for joining us, Carl.
Happy to be here, Dennis.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on board. I feel like I haven't talked to you in ages. So,
It does seem like it.
yeah, it really does. It really does. So, Carl, tell me a bit about yourself. I mean, for our viewers anyway. I mean, we see you out there quite a bit.
Sure. As Dennis mentioned, we did work together back in our Imagine It days. It does seem like forever ago, the way we've all been spending time at home these days. I am an architectural technologist by trade, but I've done so many different things over the course of my career in the AEC industry, commercial and residential architecture. I spent some time on the GC side. I spent some time working for a custom millwork factory where we built large custom doors. And that was a really cool job because in the morning I would design it, and in the afternoon I would go out and load the wood on the big 5-axis CNC and then run it.
Oh,
A big departure from $1 billion hospital where you spend 4 years working on the same thing.
oh yeah,
Um,
for
so
sure.
so that was certainly some really cool stuff. And of course, some of you may have seen me out there from my blog, the BIM Sider, or the other podcasts that I'm on with the BIM Thoughts or Blueprints or the Built Academy podcast. I certainly like to keep busy, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I've been following your BIM Cider account for a while, and I love the content that comes out of there. So I guess that leads me into my next question. Like, you know, this year was kind of crazy. Let's face it. The past full year has been insane, and so much so that it has affected all the conferences that we attend. Like, I mean, Autodesk University and Built, and I just want to say, sorry, Built, that I didn't make it out that year at Scottsdale. I really wanted to be out there to do that presentation on Dynamo, but thank you to Zach Cron for covering me on that one. That was great. But yeah, so with Autodesk University being digital, like what were your thoughts on it? Like I felt it was fairly well run.
It was certainly different. I mean, I think we've discussed this many times over the course of the year, and we've all kind of come to realize that virtual is never going to replace in live,
Oh yeah.
conference events.
Yeah.
But I think we're likely going to see some sort of hybrid coming up to give people sort of both options, because even when we could all go to conferences and attend, there was always people that couldn't make it for whatever reason.
Yep.
They have family commitments. The company can only send one of the two from the BIM team or what have you. So I think the idea of having a virtual option for those that can't make it, similar to what AU started to do in the past with their AU Online, where the conference events were available online, and some of the key things like the keynotes and the addresses were available to stream for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny because
But
yeah, I would say that applying for those presentations, it's always nerve-wracking because you submit like 20 to 25 of them and hope that not all 25 of them get accepted.
absolutely, and that's certainly one of the things that kind of changed with an all digital format.
Mhm.
It was just different. Not different good, not different bad, just different.
Yeah.
Uh, the session that I did this year at AU was completely re-recorded. Well, not re-recorded, pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So a month before, they have a complete recording team. You dial in. It's like a full produced event. You go through the whole session. But it's just different than getting the feedback. And even if there's not questions during the session, it's looking at people. If you have a joke, gauging reaction. And I also find that the people tend to slow you down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when there's no interaction, you plan for 60 minutes and you just give her.
Yeah.
You sort of finish up earlier. So it definitely made a difference. And I know they tried with their um, live Q&A session. So you'd record a session, and then sometime during AU week, you would have an hour-long Zoom type meeting. I don't think it was actually Zoom they used,
Yeah.
where people could dial in and sort of give you questions. But I think for the most part that confused people because a lot of times they thought that was the actual live session and they were expecting to see the session, and it was really just a Q&A. So I think it was a good idea. I think if it happened again, people might understand it better. But for the first run, it didn't go as well as planned, I think.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And you know, it was super crazy. This year I got accepted for a theater talk, and it was pretty shocking to see because they sent an entire media kit to my front door. And the whole thing was like green screens and cams and all this stuff. And I was moving around furniture in my living room to make this like quasi studio. And it was an experience. It really was. And, you know, I'm interested to see what's going to happen moving forward with the different events. But yeah, I want to take a step aside here. And, you know, you made a really awesome shift to a great company called BIMTrack. So for those of the people who are on the line who don't know what BIMTrack is, Carl, are you able to shed a little light on BIMTrack itself?
I can do that.
Awesome.
So I've been at BIMTrack for just a little over a year now, and essentially BIMTrack is the product that the company is actually BIM one that developed the add-in. And what BIMTrack does is it's a coordination tool that tracks issues. And we always say it's an issue tracking tool, but the one thing to keep in mind is issues really can be anything. They don't have to be that hole in the drywall or that missing column or that someone didn't check a box on a form. It really can be pretty much anything that you want it to be. And so that's what we try to do at BIMTrack is we try to give you a platform that ties into your tool of choice. We have several integrations and add-ins, whether it's Navisworks or Revit or ArchiCAD or Tekla Structures or Enscape or Power BI that allows you to do your typical workflow, but have a way to communicate, to assign, and to view your information that you have in place. So you always have access to the issues, doing air quotes here, that you need to address. And whether you're using this from pre-design through to pre-construction, construction, and we have people that are using it through in facilities management and handover, where an issue will be a piece of equipment that has, the maintenance log, the
Okay.
PDF of the information, all of that in place. So we sort of cover that entire gamut of the spectrum.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to play around with it with a few of our projects. It seems like the construction crews are really starting to take it on board, and especially when it comes to clash meetings and accountability. It's been a very very quick tool. So I mean, like, what areas are you seeing this pop in? I think you touched base on it briefly there, but what areas of the industry is BIMTrack really helping out on?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned general contractors, GC. That's sort of the obvious fit, and that's where we got sort of the quick wins and the early adoption. And I think what we're seeing now is right after you get into the general contractors that are using it for tracking issues on a construction project, is we have the architects and the engineers that are kind of battling from month to month to see who's sort of second to the general contractor for usage. And then we have sort of the mechanicals, then we get into the sub trades, the owners. As I mentioned, we do sort of touch the entire gamut, but it really is sort of the general contractors and the architects and the engineers that are the bulk of the users.
Yep.
And I think what we really are noticing is that when people are invited to a project, general contractor says, hey, we're using BIMTrack to track our issues, come and play in our sandbox. Is that once people use it, they sort of see all the different things, and we get a lot of people that start using it after the fact as an internal project. They'll get their own license and they'll use it for drawing review. They'll use it for task management on the internal side, especially with the MEP side, because they have such different workflows and things that they do. When they're doing prefab and fabrication on their own side,
Yep.
but they really like the way it interacts with their software, Revit, Navisworks, and they'd use it for their internal workflow. So that's kind of like the new stream we're seeing. That and owners. Owners love to own their data. So by being the ones that have access to it and that are requesting people to use it, they get a lot more vision into their projects.
That's great. And I noticed that like one of the really good features about it is it's not just Autodesk related products too, right? You're able to use BIMTrack across a few different product lines. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And it was founded on OpenBIM. So when you use the viewer, it uses IFCs, it uses BCF. And while we do certainly have add-ins for Autodesk products, we also have add-ins for Trimble and Tekla and, the Celebri, a whole wide gamut of projects for that exact reason. We want it to be, as software agnostic as possible, and understanding that in the global arena that we're all in now working, that on one project you may be working with people that are using Navisworks, the next project working with someone that's using Celebri. You have people that like to use Enscape for the rendering, and then we get into just ArchiCAD on the next project. So to be able to have one platform that ties into so many, it just makes your life so much easier that you're not relearning a different workflow every time.
Yeah, that's a huge help. So I know Autodesk has brought out their construction cloud recently. So how is BIMTrack working with the new construction cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the construction cloud, formerly BIM 360, formerly something before that. It's sometimes hard to keep up with what they're doing.
Yeah.
But what we see a lot with the working with the construction cloud, or before that BIM 360 Collaborate, or the old classic BIM 360 Glue, for example,
Yep.
what a lot of people will do is they'll store their content inside of that. So they'll use that platform to store their federated models. They'll use that platform for the automatic clash detection that you get with Coordinate, or the new BIM 360 Pro,
Mm-hmm.
or just Coordinate. They'll use that functionality, but then they will use BIMTrack to actually track the issues, because it ties into those platforms. And what really becomes the handshake there is Navisworks in this example.
Gotcha.
So they can save all that information in the cloud. They can open those things they've been automatically clash detecting inside of Coordinate, and then they'll bring that into Navisworks, which allows them to do selection sets, and get a little deeper into their clash detection.
Yep.
And then because the BIMTrack add-in ties into Navisworks, they'll use that to connect, create, and share out and assign all of the issues. So it's kind of like a parallel process. And the same thing if you're using design, except replace out, Coordinate for design.
Yep.
Same workflow.
Awesome. So yeah, it definitely adds a little bit more editability to the whole process, which is great. Having that freedom to combine and create an issue platform is huge, because I know the questions come up tons of times for myself. So I mean, with all that moving forward, I'm pretty excited to see where BIMTrack's going to go. Is what's the future looking like for BIMTrack? Are there is issues going to be the main focus going forward? Or, I mean, obviously you can only tell me what you are allowed to tell, but it's up to you. Yeah.
Well, and that's a great question. And one of the things that we sort of pride ourselves on is sort of staying focused. We like to say laser focused on the issue platform.
Yep.
So that we're not trying to get into being a common data environment. We're not,
Good.
trying to get into being a rendering platform, all these other things. What we really want to do is be that piece of the puzzle that does a really good job of taking care of your issues, whatever you call an issue,
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to tie into as many other platforms as we can. And what we're seeing is that as we're growing, and as we're getting more add-ins and more integrations, that more people are coming on board to get into that. And so it's kind of that organic growth, 2 tells 4 tells 8, and sort of growing on. And as that happens, we're finding ourselves being able to tie into more and more workflows. And the example I always give of that is Enscape. Enscape's a great product.
Yeah.
I heard someone say a couple months ago that Enscape was that product that everybody heard about 4 years ago, and now it's that product that everyone has.
Yeah.
It's kind of made that leap from it's a nice thing to everyone has Enscape.
Yep.
And now that we have that ability to tie in with Enscape, it allows us to tie into other products that we can't access.
Yep.
So if you have Enscape, you can now create and track BIMTrack issues in Rhino and inside of SketchUp. We
Wow.
don't tie into those products, but because Enscape does, it plays that bridge part. And now we've extended our ecosystem that much further because of that.
That's
so it's
really
that
cool.
organic growth that makes it so awesome to be able to use it on where you need to and where you want to.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I was actually just going to bring up that exact same example. I was going to say either Enscape or Formit or Point Fuse. Point Fuse does a really good job at making meshes from point clouds. But that's their focus, is to take the whole point cloud process and make it more, more refined, and do a really good job at doing that. So, I mean, seeing that happen with any software is great, instead of, thinning yourself out too much and missing out on, big ticket items. So yeah,
Yeah.
exciting. I'm glad to hear it. So, I mean, BIMTrack obviously has such massive potential. I mean, we're using it right now in a few projects at the company I'm working for at the moment, and I lean on it heavily to hold people accountable for certain items. It's really really great. So yeah, I mean, aside from BIMTrack, the future of BIM is pretty crazy. I've seen the emergence of hundreds of prefab firms building all kinds of crazy stuff. So a question for you is like, do you still see 2D drawings as a deliverable in the future? And if not, like, how do you think that's gonna look? Like, what do you think might change?
So, do I see 2D deliverables in the future as that's what's going to be the deliverable, or do I think they'll still be around? Because the answer differs. I think they're going to be around for a while because until the contracts and the legal obligations change to
Yep.
allow something other than the 2D drawings to be the documented record, we're going to be stuck with them.
Yep.
I think that there's the possibility in the future that we rely on them less and less. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have things to be able to improve the functionality of creating better documents from the model
Yep.
and to be able to view the model easier while we're on the field so that we can go into the model, we can zoom in, find a dimension and pick that. And as that becomes easier, as we have to spend less time actually documenting, I just made up that word here,
I love that word.
documenting the model, the more we can easily pull information we need off of the model, the
Mm-hmm.
sooner we'll start getting there. And I think it's really going to be a case of a few brave firms and GCs and owners that say, we are going to use the model, and they start actually doing it.
Yep.
Then slowly we'll see the change away. But I don't think that we're going to get the all clear to use the model before people are actually doing it. I think we're going to have to do it the other way.
Yeah, it's so we've been having this discussion, quite a bit in the background of the industry and talking about when the industry starts creating this globalized assemblies standard or like variations of assembly groupings and they just become 3D snapping blocks essentially, or more so like attached with specs and estimates and all that stuff, and then they just come in as like an IKEA flipbook set that you just kind of say, okay, part A, this wall assembly has to go to part B. It's interesting. So it's a big shift for sure. But I guess the really interesting one that we've been talking about quite a bit recently was augmented reality. We're seeing, massive signs. We've already seen it in like Facebook. We've seen the Project Aria, I believe, the glasses and all the different things happening with Magic Leaf. So with that happening, the discussion we're having is: do you see a large impact on renovations with augmented reality? Like, in Ready Player One, they have these old rundown buildings, but they just cover it with augmented solutions to make it look crazy. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I certainly think that we're going to get to the stage where augmented reality kind of outplays virtual reality. And we go into that mixed reality or extended reality where we have the ability to do both. But I certainly see for the construction industry that augmented reality is the way of the future.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to do, like we mentioned, maybe they can pull up the model on their HoloLens 2, or maybe in the future 3 or 5 or 7 or whatever we're working on,
Yeah.
and they're able to pull up the model and see it and get information off of that, so we don't need to rely on the plans. And usually when we get into things like renovations and not building big industrial buildings, it takes a little longer to get there. But I think it's one of those things where technology will start giving the small guy, the small teams, the small firms, an advantage. And those that adopt it and are a little more agile are going to be able to get more out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long way of saying is I absolutely think that augmented reality is going to make a big difference in that field, and that's what's going to help make that game changer to get us off of plans and to get us in there.
Yeah.
And the idea of using old buildings that don't have to be you know completely designed, but we just make them look like that because we're using them as a virtual or an augmented reality. I think maybe that opens up a whole new business for interior designers. They become coders. So not only are architects learning to code, so are our interior designers, so they can design this shell that just changes for the need. What kind of party we having today? Well, we'll put on the augmented reality
Yeah.
switch for a graduation or a wedding or a dance party or whatever. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking about it, like how there's going to be a new wave of jobs opening up for what we're calling experience architects, where individuals are taking like say for instance, the Google AR cloud, and they're attaching cloud points to the front face of a building and anchoring it. And then they take back the cloud scan that they have and design a whole augmented experience around, let's say, a car dealership. And then as you put on your glasses, you drive into a car dealership parking lot to go pick up your brand new car. And then there's tunnels happening and all kinds of crazy things popping up, and you're going to pick up your car, and then it just highlights it and do some crazy things. So like the future's kind of crazy. I mean, we'll have the ability to take the person's storefront and expand it out like 10 feet out off the front face of the building and show the latest, meals and deals, and, tied into Google when you go to search for your destination. It's craziness what's happening. And I'm interested to see where it's going to go. Definitely interested to be a part of it. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be nuts. Do you see it being an all or nothing, or do you think it'll start with sort of a hybrid, like you mentioned? Though the first 10 feet of a building is constantly changing, and then when you walk into the back, it's old school stock and store.
Well, it's like this is the crux, I guess. We've been having this discussion with malls and whatnot about how the experience would be and how you would create a core experience and then individualized tenant experiences. So for instance, like walking into a mall, the core experience would be you walk in, and in the food court during Christmas shopping time, you see a Santa and his reindeer flying overhead in the open court. And like just creating like an interactive experience while you've got your glasses on. And it's starting as a trickle, so it starts with the cell phone, and then the same technology from the cell phone will move into the glasses, and then from there it gets more tied in. But the biggest part that we've seen and had the conversation with a few AR developers is legalities with distraction. So when to turn it off and when to not have something pop out and scare you while you're driving, fender into somebody. So
yeah, it's a fine line.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. There's a lot of companies that are building up the tech behind it, and I think it's interesting to see where it'll happen. And who knows, with BIMTrack, we're going to be seeing those issues popping up on site in those AR goggles. And with the what was the name of the company that was at AU 2015? It's escaping me right now. They made a like fully integrated construction helmet with the AR override.
Yes, and they're no longer around, and the name is it's blanking me now as well, which is sad, because it was this great technology. It came into place. It lost its funding, and then it disappeared.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what you're talking about, and the name escapes me now too.
It was great. They had everything going in the right direction, and had the chance. Like, it was a full safety helmet, and I think HoloLens actually has a very similar application as well. But being able to integrate your issues into the hard hat, so that we can identify like that shouldn't be there, and then relay that back to the team. That's huge. So yeah, if you, for the viewers that are listening, if you haven't had the chance, make sure to go check out BIMsider. And Carl Storms has done a great job building up this amazing track of information for his BIMsider page, and I believe podcast too.
That's correct.
Yep. So check it out. He and one of his 20 presentations during the Autodesk University every year, which I always look forward to. Do you have any big plans for presentations coming out this year?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just so different, because last year, at least, we were sort of applying for all the events in the standard way before things all changed. And this year, we're not really sure what's happening or what's going to be. So it's been a little bit different. But I'm certainly itching to get out there and to start speaking again. So if there's an opportunity, I'm going to put in my 1 or 25 submissions to be there for sure.
Well, regardless, I'm sure we're all looking forward to it. Well, Carl, that's it for me. Tons of great questions, and thank you very much for joining on the channel. If you guys want to check out some more of the great content we have coming up for Buck FIM, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel or check it out on your favorite podcast. We'll be hitting every Tuesday and Thursday at lunch. And yeah, thank you very much, Carl, for jumping online.
Awesome. Thanks for letting me be here.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. For the meantime, keep on BIMing. Take care.